I woke up with a sharp pain in my chest. For a few seconds, I couldn't understand what was happening. The last thing I remembered was the sound of rain hitting the pavement. I remembered the cold floor beneath me. I remembered Ryan Mitchell standing in front of me, wearing the same innocent expression that had fooled everyone for years. And I remembered my own blood dripping from my forehead as he whispered, "You were never supposed to come back, Ethan." Then everything went dark. But now, I opened my eyes. I was lying on an old leather sofa inside the Carter family mansion. The same sofa, the same room, the same day. I sat up slowly, my hands trembling. No, my voice was barely a whisper. How am I here? I looked around in disbelief. This was impossible. I had died. At least, I was supposed to be dead. I walked toward the mirror on the wall. The reflection staring back at me was not the man I had become before my death. It was me at 18 years old, young, healthy, before years of disappointment had destroyed the hope in my eyes. I touched my face. I could still remember everything. The humiliation, the loneliness, the endless nights wondering why my own family hated me. And most importantly, the moment I realized the people I called family never truly saw me as one of them. A sound came from the hallway, footsteps, then the door opened. My mother, Victoria Carter, walked in first. Behind her were my three sisters, Olivia, Claire, Sophia, and following them was Ryan Mitchell, the adopted son of the Carter family, the person who destroyed my life. Seeing him again made my heart tighten, not because I was afraid, because I finally understood. In my previous life, I spent years fighting for their love. This time, I wouldn't waste a second. Ryan held a torn designer jacket in his hand. His expression looked worried, but I knew that face, that fake kindness, that carefully practiced innocence. "Mom," Ryan said softly, "I think Ethan accidentally damaged this." Victoria immediately frowned. Her eyes turned toward me. "Ethan," her voice was cold, "did you ruin Ryan's jacket?" For a moment, I almost laughed. The same question, the same accusation, the same beginning. In my previous life, I had explained everything. I told them I didn't touch the jacket. I told them Ryan had left it near the garden. I begged them to believe me. Nobody listened. Nobody cared. Because in their eyes, Ryan was the perfect son, and I was the problem they brought home from an orphanage. Olivia crossed her arms. "Ethan, why do you always create trouble?" Claire sighed. "You just came back from the orphanage a few years ago. You should know your position." Sophia looked at me with disappointment. "You need to stop making everyone uncomfortable." Those words were familiar, too familiar. 5 years. 5 years of trying to become part of this family. 5 years of trying to prove I wasn't the unwanted child they thought I was. But this time, I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I simply looked at Ryan. Then I said, "Yes." Everyone froze. Victoria stared at me. "What?" I shrugged. "I ruined it." Silence filled the room. Even Ryan looked surprised, because this was not how I was supposed to react. He expected me to panic, to beg, to desperately prove my innocence. But I was tired, so tired. Victoria's face became colder. "You admit it?" "Yes." I looked at her, the woman who was supposed to be my mother, the woman I spent years trying to impress. And suddenly, I felt nothing, because it doesn't matter. Her eyebrows tightened. "What do you mean?" I smiled slightly. "Whether I did it or not. You already decided I was guilty." Nobody spoke, because they knew I was right. Ryan quickly stepped forward. "Mom, maybe Ethan didn't mean it. Don't punish him too harshly." There it was. The same performance. The same fake kindness. Everyone immediately looked at him with affection. Ryan is always so considerate. He's such a good brother. I almost laughed. In my previous life, I used to hate Ryan. But now, I realized something. Ryan was not the biggest problem. The biggest problem was that everyone chose to believe him. Every single time. Victoria walked toward the cabinet. She took out the old leather belt. My body reacted before my mind did. A familiar fear appeared, because I remembered. This was the belt she used whenever Ryan accused me. I remembered the pain. I remembered kneeling on the floor. I remembered hoping someone would stop her. Nobody ever did. Not once. Victoria looked at me. "Get down." In the past, I would have obeyed, but this time, I remained standing. Her expression changed. Ethan, I looked at her calmly. The room became silent. What did you say? I repeated. I asked why. Olivia's face changed. Claire looked surprised. Even Sophia stopped smiling. Because for the first time, I questioned them. Why do you always believe him? Nobody answered. Why am I always guilty before you ask what happened? My voice became colder. After 5 years, am I still treated like a stranger in this house? Victoria's expression became angry. Enough. No. I shook my head. Not this time. I looked at every person in the room. My whole life, I wanted one thing, to be your family. My voice became quieter. But I finally understand. You never wanted a son. You wanted someone to blame. Ryan's expression changed slightly, because he knew something was different. I was no longer the boy who begged for acceptance. I was someone who had already lost everything once. And that meant I had nothing left to fear. I walked toward the door. Olivia stepped forward. Where are you going? I stopped. Then I answered, leaving. Sophia frowned. Don't be dramatic. Ethan. I looked back at her. Dramatic. I smiled. 5 years of being ignored, insulted, and blamed. That was normal. But me leaving, that's dramatic. Nobody spoke. I opened the door. Behind me, Victoria shouted, if you walk out now, don't expect this family to forgive you. My hand stopped on the door handle. For a moment, the old Ethan would have turned around. He would have apologized. He would have begged. But that Ethan was gone. I turned slightly. Don't worry. My voice was calm. You won't have to forgive me. Everyone looked confused. I continued, because from today, I don't need this family anymore. Then I walked out, without looking back. Outside the Carter mansion, I stood on the driveway, the place where I once dreamed of belonging, the place where I spent years trying to become worthy of love. Now it meant nothing. I took out my phone. My bank account had only a few $100s. I had no home, no family, no support, but for the first time in my life, I felt free, because I remembered the future. I knew which companies would rise. I knew which industries would explode. I knew every opportunity waiting in front of me. Crypto, technology, online commerce, artificial intelligence. The world was about to change, and this time, I would change with it. My name was Ethan Carter, the son the Carter family abandoned, the mistake they thought they had thrown away. But they didn't know something. The person they abandoned was the person who would one day stand above them all. And when that day came, they would finally understand what they had lost. But by then, it would be too late. The first night after leaving the Carter mansion, I slept in a small apartment barely big enough for one person. The room was old. The furniture was cheap. The walls were thin enough that I could hear my neighbors arguing through them. But strangely, I slept better than I had in years, because for the first time, nobody was waiting to accuse me. Nobody was watching me. Nobody was reminding me that I was the outsider in my own home. I opened my eyes the next morning and stared at the cracked ceiling. For a few seconds, I forgot where I was. Then reality came rushing back. I was 18 years old. I had been given a second chance. A chance to rewrite everything. I sat up and looked at the small desk beside the bed. On it was an old notebook. Inside were all the things I remembered from my previous life. The companies that would rise. The technologies that would change the world. The investments that would create billionaires. In my previous life, I spent years trying to earn the Carter family's love. I wasted my youth chasing people who never looked back at me. This time, I would chase something different. Success, freedom, power. I picked up my phone and checked my bank account. $843. That was everything I had. A normal person would have panicked. But I smiled, because I knew something they didn't. Money was not what created opportunities. Information was, and I had 10 years of future knowledge inside my head. 3 days after I left the Carter family, everyone expected me to come crawling back. Of course they did. In their minds, I was still the weak boy who needed them. The boy who couldn't survive without the Carter name. At the Carter mansion, my family sat together during dinner. Olivia looked at her phone. Has Ethan contacted anyone? Nobody answered. Claire shook her head. No. Sophia laughed softly. He probably thinks we're going to apologize. Ryan smiled. A small, almost invisible smile. But I noticed that smile many times in my previous life. It was the smile of someone who had already won. Maybe we should give him some time, Ryan said. He's probably just angry. Victoria sighed. He always acts emotional. Olivia frowned. He should know this family has rules. Nobody worried. Nobody thought something was wrong, because they believed they still controlled my life. They didn't know. I had already moved on. My first step was cryptocurrency. In this year, most people still thought Bitcoin was nothing more than an internet joke. Some people laughed when they heard about it. Others called it fake money. But I remembered the future. I knew exactly what would happen. I didn't have enough money to make a huge investment. So I started small, very small. I used every dollar I had. Then I found two people who would become important in my future. My old friends from the orphanage, Michael Turner and Jason Brooks. When they saw me, they were shocked. Ethan, Michael looked at me carefully. What happened? Where is your family? I smiled. I left. Jason frowned. Wait, you mean you left the Carter family? I nodded. Both of them went silent. Everyone knew the Carter family. They were one of the most powerful families in New York. Leaving them sounded crazy. Michael lowered his voice. Are you okay? I looked at my two friends. They were different from my so-called family. They had nothing. No money. No power. But they cared. And that was worth more than anything I had received from the Carters. I'm fine. I opened my notebook. I need your help. Jason looked at the information. What is this? A business plan. Michael laughed. Ethan, we barely have enough money to eat. Are you seriously talking about starting a company? I looked at him. Yes. With what money? I pointed at the numbers. With $800. They stared at me. Then they laughed. Not because they didn't believe in me, because it sounded impossible. But I wasn't joking. I had seen the future. I knew what was coming. And I knew exactly where to stand. A week later, we rented a tiny office. It wasn't impressive. Actually, calling it an office was generous. It was a small room above an old store. The paint was peeling. The desks were secondhand. The computers were outdated. But I didn't care. Every empire started somewhere. I spent every day analyzing the market, finding opportunities, building connections. At night, I wrote business strategies until my eyes hurt. Michael watched me one evening. You know something, Ethan? I looked up. What? You don't look like someone who lost everything. I smiled. Because I didn't. He looked confused. What do you mean? I closed my laptop. I lost a family that never loved me. But I gained a future. Meanwhile, at the Carter mansion, things were beginning to change. Olivia walked into my old room. She had never really cared about it before. To her, it was just another bedroom. But now, she noticed something. The room was almost empty. A few books, a worn backpack, some old clothes. That was all. She opened the closet. Only 2 shirts, 1 pair of shoes. Her expression changed. How is this possible? She called the housekeeper. When did Ethan get new clothes? The housekeeper hesitated. Miss Olivia, tell me. The old woman lowered her head. Young Master Ethan never asked for anything. Olivia froze. What? He wore the same clothes for years. He worked part-time after school. He paid for his own expenses. Olivia stared at the room. For the first time, a strange feeling appeared in her heart. Guilt, because she suddenly realized something terrifying. They had spent years calling Ethan selfish, but nobody had ever asked, what had Ethan actually received from them? That night, Olivia found Ethan's old phone. She wasn't trying to invade his privacy. She just wanted to understand. But what she saw changed everything. Hundreds of messages. Almost all of them were sent by Ethan to his sisters. Olivia, congratulations on winning the competition. Claire, good luck with your lecture tomorrow. Sophia, I watched your new movie trailer. You were amazing. Messages after messages. Years of love. Years of trying. But the replies were almost empty. Sometimes there was no response at all. Olivia's hands started shaking. She scrolled further. Then she saw something. A photo. Ethan was standing outside her company building, holding a lunchbox, rain pouring around him. The date was 5 years ago. She remembered that day. She had been busy. She had told security to remove whoever was bothering her. She never knew. That person was Ethan, her little brother, the brother who had waited hours just to bring her lunch. Olivia covered her mouth. Tears slowly fell. Ethan. Her voice trembled. Why didn't you tell me? But there was nobody there to answer, because the person who once waited for her had already walked away. At the same time, thousands of miles away from that mansion, I looked at the first profit report of my company. A small number, but it was only the beginning. I closed my laptop. The Carter family thought they had thrown away a useless son. They were wrong. They had released someone who knew the future. And soon, the entire world would know my name, Ethan Carter. 6 months. That was all it took. 6 months after leaving the Carter family. My life had completely changed, but the world still had no idea. To everyone else, I was still Ethan Carter, the abandoned son, the boy who ran away from one of the most powerful families in New York. A joke, a failure, a nobody, and I was perfectly fine with that, because while they were laughing at me, I was building something they could never imagine. The first major breakthrough came from a simple idea, a platform that connected small sellers directly with customers. In my previous life, companies built around this idea would dominate the market. But at this point in time, nobody had truly realized its potential. Everyone was focused on luxury brands, big corporations, expensive stores. They ignored the millions of ordinary people trying to sell their products. That was their mistake. And that was my opportunity. I spent weeks refining the business model. Michael handled operations. Jason focused on technology. And I handled everything else. Investors, marketing, strategy, negotiations. People often asked me how an 18-year-old could understand business so well. I always gave the same answer. I pay attention. But the truth was different. I had already watched this world change once. I knew where it was going. One night, Michael walked into our tiny office carrying 3 cups of coffee. He placed one beside me. Ethan, do you ever sleep? I looked away from my computer. Sometimes. He laughed. That's not an answer. I smiled. What about you? You came here at midnight too. He shrugged. Because I believe in you. Those words made me stop. Believe. A simple word. But something I had spent my entire previous life searching for. The Carter family had everything. Money, status, power. But they never believed in me. Yet the people who had nothing were the ones standing beside me. At the same time, inside the Carter mansion, the atmosphere was completely different. Ryan Mitchell was enjoying the life he always wanted. Expensive clothes, luxury cars, private events. Everyone treated him like the future heir of the Carter family. But recently, something bothered him. Me. Even though I had disappeared, Ryan couldn't relax, because he knew something nobody else knew. He knew I wasn't stupid. He knew I wasn't weak. He knew the reason I had survived all those years in the Carter family was because I was patient. And patience was dangerous. One evening, Ryan sat across from Victoria. Mom. She looked up. What is it? Ethan. Her expression changed slightly. What about him? Ryan hesitated. I think we should be careful. Victoria frowned. Careful. He might come back. She laughed. Come back, Ryan. Ethan has nothing. He doesn't even have a place to live. Ryan lowered his eyes. But what if he does something? Victoria's voice became cold. Don't worry. He is still the same Ethan. But Ryan wasn't convinced. Because unlike everyone else, he knew I had changed. 3 months later, something happened that shocked the business world. A young technology company suddenly appeared. No one knew where it came from. No one knew who was behind it. But within weeks, everyone started talking about it. The company solved a problem that many businesses had ignored. Small sellers finally had a place to grow. Customers found cheaper products. Investors saw enormous potential. The name started appearing everywhere. Carter Digital. Not because of my family, because of me. The first major investor meeting arrived. I walked into a conference room wearing a simple black suit. Most people expected a young founder to look nervous. They expected someone inexperienced. Instead, they saw someone calm, confident, prepared. The lead investor, Daniel Brooks, looked through the documents. Then he looked at me. "Mr. Carter, you're 18 years old. Do you really believe you can compete against companies that have been in this industry for decades?" Everyone waited for my answer. I didn't hesitate. "Yes." Daniel raised an eyebrow. I leaned back. "Because those companies understand the market today. I understand the market tomorrow." The room became quiet. I continued. "Big companies focus on protecting what they already have. We are focused on creating what doesn't exist yet." Daniel stared at me for several seconds. Then he smiled. "Interesting." 2 weeks later, the news broke. Carter Digital received its first major investment, $50 million. The business world exploded. A young entrepreneur, a new company, a shocking rise. And the most interesting part, nobody knew who Ethan Carter really was. Except one person, Olivia Carter. She was sitting in her office when she saw the news. The article appeared on her computer screen. 18-year-old entrepreneur secures $50 million investment. The next tech visionary. She clicked. Then she froze. The founder's photo appeared. It was me, Ethan, her little brother. For several minutes, she couldn't move, because she suddenly remembered something. The boy who left the mansion wasn't a failure. He wasn't useless. He wasn't a problem. He was someone who had been forced to grow alone. Olivia whispered, "How did we never see this?" That evening, Claire and Sophia also saw the news. Their reactions were different. Claire immediately searched for more information. The more she read, the more shocked she became. Top grades, perfect academic record, multiple achievements, a business plan that impressed professional investors. Sophia stared at the screen. "That's impossible." Claire looked at her. Because Sophia's voice became quieter. "Because Ethan was never like this." Claire looked at her seriously. "No, he was always like this. We just never cared enough to notice." The room fell silent. Meanwhile, I stood inside my new office. It was still small, nothing compared to the Carter mansion. But it was mine. Every chair, every computer, every employee, everything existed because of my own choices. My phone suddenly rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. "Ethan Carter." "Yes." A woman's voice came through. "This is Olivia." I was silent. My sister, the person I once admired more than anyone. After a few seconds, she asked softly, "Can we talk?" I looked out the window. 6 months ago, I would have answered immediately. I would have been happy, excited, hopeful. But now, I felt nothing. I calmly replied, "There is nothing to talk about, Ethan. I am busy." Then I ended the call, because I finally understood something. The hardest part of leaving the Carter family was not walking away. It was accepting that I had already stopped needing them. And soon, they would realize the same thing. They had lost the son they never valued, and they would never get him back. I used to believe that family was something you were born into. I believed that no matter how much they hurt you, no matter how many times they disappointed you, you should always forgive them, because they were your family. That was what I thought in my previous life. And that belief destroyed me. But after dying once, I finally understood. Blood did not always mean love. And sometimes, the people who shared your name could hurt you more than anyone else in the world. After my company received its first major investment, my life became busier than ever. Every day was filled with meetings. Every night was spent analyzing market trends and planning the next step. My company was growing faster than anyone expected. But I never celebrated, because I knew something. Success was not about proving myself to the Carter family. It was about proving something to myself, that I could survive without them, that I never needed their approval. Meanwhile, at the Carter mansion, something inside the family had started to change, especially for my oldest sister, Olivia. Before I left, she always thought she understood me. She believed I was stubborn, uneducated, emotional, a troublemaker. But after seeing my company announcement, she began questioning everything, because the Ethan Carter she saw in the news was completely different from the Ethan Carter she remembered. The young man in the article was confident, calm, brilliant, a person respected by investors twice his age. Not the boy they constantly criticized, not the boy they ignored, not the boy they treated like an outsider. One evening, Olivia walked into the room I used to live in. She had entered that room countless times before, but she had never truly looked at it. Not once. This time, she did, and what she saw made her heart sink. The room was almost empty. A small desk, a few old textbooks, a worn backpack, and a closet with only a few pieces of clothing. She slowly opened the drawer. Inside was a collection of small items. A birthday card, old photographs, handwritten notes. Olivia picked one up. Her name was written on it. She froze. It was a message from years ago. Congratulations on winning first place. Olivia, I knew you could do it. I'm proud of you. The date was 5 years ago. She remembered that day. She had won an important academic competition. The entire family celebrated. Everyone praised her. And Ethan, he had been standing nearby, smiling proudly. She had ignored him because she was busy, because she thought his attention was unnecessary. But now, she realized something. He had never been trying to embarrass her. He had been proud of her. Olivia sat on the edge of the bed. Her fingers trembled. Why didn't I notice? For 5 years, Ethan had been trying to become part of their family, and they had spent 5 years pushing him away. The next person who began to understand was Claire, my second sister, a university professor, a woman everyone considered intelligent and rational. But when it came to me, she had never used logic. She only believed what Ryan said. One afternoon, she found an old message conversation between me and her. At first, she thought it would be meaningless, but as she read, her expression slowly changed. The messages were almost all from me. Claire, your lecture today was amazing. Claire, I saw your research article. Congratulations. Claire, don't forget to eat lunch. You always get too busy. Months, years, messages filled with concern. But her replies, almost nothing. Sometimes a simple, okay, sometimes no response at all. Claire stared at the screen. She remembered all the times I tried to talk to her, all the times I wanted her attention, and all the times she pushed me away. Her eyes became red. I was your sister. Her voice cracked. Why did I treat you like a stranger? Then there was Sophia, the youngest sister, the famous actress of the Carter family. She had always been the most protected. Everyone worried about her, including me. Sophia discovered something in an old storage box, a handmade photo album. Inside were pictures of her career, awards, interviews, movie posters, everything she had achieved. But the person who created it was me. She remembered. Years ago, she found that album. She thought it was embarrassing. She threw it away. She even told me, "Stop acting like my fan. You're annoying." At the time, I had just lowered my head. I didn't argue. I didn't complain. I simply picked up the broken pieces, because I loved my sister, but she never knew. That night, the 3 sisters sat together. Nobody spoke for a long time. Finally, Olivia said, "We were wrong." Claire looked down. No, her voice was filled with pain. "We weren't just wrong. We hurt him." Sophia wiped away her tears. "But Ethan never hated us." The room became silent, because they all knew the truth. The person they treated the worst was the person who loved them the most. The next day, Olivia came to my company. She arrived without an appointment. My assistant stopped her. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter. Mr. Carter is in a meeting." Olivia looked at the office door. 5 years ago, I had stood outside her office, waiting, hoping she would give me a few minutes. But she had told security to remove me. Now, she was the one waiting outside. The difference was painful. "I'll wait." My assistant was surprised. "Miss Carter, you may need to wait a long time." Olivia smiled sadly. "That's okay. I made him wait for years." When my meeting ended, I walked out. I immediately saw her. For a second, the old memories appeared. The sister I once admired. The person I once wanted to impress. But those feelings disappeared quickly. "Ethan." Her voice was soft. "We need to talk." I looked at her calmly. "What about?" She lowered her head. About everything. I waited. She took a deep breath. I'm sorry. A simple apology. Something I once dreamed of hearing. But now, came too late. I looked at her. Sorry for what? Olivia froze. For, she struggled to speak. For not treating you like my brother. I smiled slightly. Olivia, you don't need to apologize because you forgot me. You need to apologize because you remembered me only after I became successful. Her eyes filled with tears. Ethan, that's not true. Isn't it? I looked directly at her. If I was still living in that small room, if I was still wearing old clothes, would you have come here? She couldn't answer, because she knew. The silence was the answer. I walked past her. Ethan. I stopped but didn't turn around. She whispered, can you ever forgive us? For a moment, I thought about it. Then I answered, I don't know. Her eyes widened, because it was not anger. It was worse. Indifference. I spent years wanting my family, but now, I don't know if I still need one. Then I entered the elevator. The doors slowly closed, leaving Olivia standing there alone. That night, the Carter family watched another piece of news. My company had just announced a new partnership, another major step forward. Ryan stared at the screen. His expression became darker, because he finally understood something. Ethan Carter was no longer the abandoned child. He was becoming someone impossible to control. And if Ethan continued growing, everything Ryan had stolen would eventually return to its rightful owner. For the first time, Ryan felt afraid, because the person he once looked down on was becoming the biggest threat to everything he had. The world changes faster than people expect. 6 months ago, nobody knew my name. I was just Ethan Carter, the son who disappeared from the Carter mansion, the boy everyone believed would fail without his family. But now, my name appeared on business websites. Investors discussed my company. Young entrepreneurs called me an inspiration. The same people who once ignored me were now trying to understand me. But the Carter family still couldn't accept one thing. The person they abandoned was becoming someone they could no longer control. My company, Carter Digital, continued growing. The small office above the old store had become a memory. We moved into a modern building in downtown Manhattan. It wasn't the largest building in the city. It wasn't the most expensive. But to me, it meant something. Every inch of that office existed because of my own decisions. Nobody gave it to me. Nobody handed me opportunities. Nobody protected me. I earned everything. One morning, I walked into the office and saw my employees working. Some were young. Some had years of experience. But all of them believed in the same goal, building something that could change the market. Michael walked toward me with a stack of documents. Ethan, the latest numbers are incredible. I took the papers. Revenue had increased again. User growth had exceeded expectations. Investor interest was rising. This is only the beginning, I said. Michael smiled. You always say that, because it's true. He laughed. You know, most people would celebrate after achieving what you have. I looked at the busy office. I don't have time to celebrate. Because I remember what happens when people become comfortable. Michael became serious. And what's that? They stopped moving forward. Meanwhile, at the Carter family headquarters, the atmosphere was completely different. Olivia sat in the conference room, looking at the latest financial report. She had been studying my company for days, not as a competitor, as a sister, and that realization hurt even more, because she discovered something. I didn't just get lucky. I was talented. The business model, the strategy, the market timing, everything showed incredible understanding. A senior executive beside her looked at the report. Miss Carter, your brother's company is extraordinary. Olivia remained silent. The executive continued, honestly, if this continues, Carter Digital could become one of the biggest technology companies in the country. Her hand tightened around the document. Her brother, that word felt strange, because for years, she had acted like I wasn't one. At home that evening, the three sisters sat together. Nobody talked at first. Finally, Claire spoke. We need to find Ethan. Sophia looked at her. He doesn't want to see us. I know. Then why? Claire looked down. Because we owe him the truth. Olivia was silent. She knew what Claire meant. The truth about everything. The truth about Ryan. Ryan had been watching all of this, and he hated it. Before Ethan returned to the Carter family, everything belonged to him. The attention, the praise, the inheritance, the future. Everyone saw him as the perfect son. But Ethan's existence threatened everything. Ryan stood in his room, staring at news reports about my company. His expression became darker. "How did you do it?" he whispered. "How did you become this?" He threw the tablet onto the bed. He couldn't understand, because in his mind, Ethan was supposed to be weak, someone who needed the Carter family, someone who would always stand behind him. But now, Ethan was standing above him. A few days later, Ryan made his move. He didn't attack me directly. He was smarter than that. Instead, he targeted my company. He used his connections. He contacted people who had influence. He spread rumors. Is Carter Digital really stable? Can an 18-year-old really run a billion-dollar company? Maybe investors made a mistake. At first, the rumors worked. Some investors became nervous. A few business partners hesitated. Employees started asking questions. Michael came into my office looking worried. "Ethan." I looked up. "What happened?" "There are rumors everywhere." He placed his phone on my desk. I read the articles. I didn't get angry. I didn't panic. Instead, I smiled. Michael looked confused. "You're smiling." "Yes, because he finally made a mistake." "Who?" I looked at the screen. "Ryan." Michael frowned. "You think Ryan is behind this?" "I don't think." I closed the article. "I know." "How?" I leaned back. "Because Ryan always does the same thing. He attacks when he's afraid." Michael was silent. Then he asked, "What are you going to do?" I looked out the window. The city stretched below me. 6 months ago, I was sleeping in a cheap apartment. Now I had a company, employees, investors, a future, and Ryan still thought he could destroy me. I won't fight him the way he expects. Michael looked curious. "What does that mean?" "It means I'll let him believe he is winning." The next day, I made an announcement. Instead of defending myself against rumors, I revealed something bigger, a new project, a technology platform that would completely change the industry. The market exploded. Investors who were uncertain became interested again. The same people who questioned me yesterday were now trying to contact me. Within 48 hours, the rumors disappeared, and Ryan's plan failed. At the Carter mansion, Ryan watched the news in disbelief. "What?" The screen showed my company valuation increasing. The reporter said, "Carter Digital's latest announcement has attracted major attention from international investors." Ryan's face turned pale. "This is impossible." Victoria walked into the room. "What happened?" Ryan immediately changed his expression. "Nothing." But Olivia noticed. For the first time, she saw fear in his eyes. Not anger, not confidence, fear. That night, Olivia confronted Ryan. "Ryan." He looked at her. "What? Did you do something to Ethan's company?" His expression changed for a second. Only a second. But Olivia saw it. "You think I would do that?" "I don't know anymore." Ryan stared at her. "Because you're finally starting to believe him." Olivia shook her head. "No." Her voice was cold. "Because I'm finally starting to see you." The room became silent. Ryan looked at her. And for the first time, he realized something. The Carter sisters were changing. They were no longer blindly standing on his side. Meanwhile, I was sitting in my office. My phone showed dozens of missed calls. Some were from investors. Some were from business partners. And 3 were from my sisters. I ignored them, not because I wanted revenge, not because I hated them, but because I remembered something. When I needed them the most, nobody answered. Now that I was successful, everyone suddenly wanted to talk. I closed my phone. My assistant knocked on the door. "Mr. Carter." "Yes." "There is someone outside asking to see you." "Who?" She hesitated. "Ryan Mitchell." I smiled. Finally, the person who started everything had arrived. I stood up. Let him in. Because this time, I wasn't the boy standing in front of him asking for acceptance. This time, he was the one coming to me, and he was about to learn the biggest lesson of his life. The person you look down on today may become the person you fear tomorrow. When Ryan Mitchell walked into my office, I already knew why he was there. He wasn't here to apologize. He wasn't here because he suddenly cared about me. Ryan had never cared about anyone except himself. He was here because, for the first time in his life, he was afraid. He stood across from my desk. The expensive suit, the confident posture, the carefully controlled expression. Everything looked exactly the same as before. The same Ryan who had fooled my family for years. But I was different now. I could see through him. Ethan. Ryan forced a smile. It's been a long time. I leaned back in my chair. Has it? He paused. What do you mean? I mean, we were never really close. The smile on his face froze. Because he knew. I wasn't the same person anymore. The old Ethan would have welcomed him. The old Ethan would have hoped Ryan came to apologize. The old Ethan would have believed that maybe, just maybe, his brother finally regretted what he had done. But that Ethan was dead. Ryan sat down without waiting for permission. I heard there have been some misunderstandings recently. I looked at him. Misunderstandings. He nodded. About the rumors surrounding your company. I smiled. So you admit you know about them. Ryan's eyes changed slightly. Only for a moment. But I noticed. I just heard people talking. People. I tapped the desk. Interesting. Because those rumors appeared after you contacted several of my business partners. Ryan became silent. Then he laughed. Ethan, you're accusing me. No. I shook my head. I'm telling you. His expression darkened. You've changed. I smiled. You're right. I changed. Because I finally stopped waiting for people like you to accept me. Ryan leaned forward. You think you're better than me now? I looked at him calmly. No, I don't think I'm better than you. I know I am. His face immediately became ugly. For years, nobody had spoken to him like that. Everyone praised him. Everyone protected him. Everyone treated him like the perfect son. But I didn't, because I knew the truth. You know what your biggest mistake was, Ryan? He stared at me. You thought I was weak because I was kind. I continued. You thought because I tolerated everything. I couldn't fight back. But you were wrong. I was just waiting. Ryan clenched his fists. You think building a company makes you powerful. No. I looked at him. Money isn't power. Control is. And you lost control the moment I left the Carter family. His expression changed. Because that was exactly what happened. Before I left, Ryan controlled the story. He was the victim. I was the problem. But once I disappeared, people started asking questions. Why did the Carter family's real son leave? Why did an 18-year-old build a company from nothing? Why did everyone underestimate him? And those questions were dangerous. Ryan stood up. You don't understand something. My entire life, I was the one everyone chose. I laughed softly. Exactly. And that's why you're scared. He frowned. What? You never earned anything. You only received what others gave you. The attention, the praise, the position in the Carter family. I looked directly at him. But now someone like me appears. Someone who built everything without anyone's help. And suddenly you realize, you were never special. Ryan's face turned pale. Because my words hit the place he tried hardest to hide. He stepped closer. You think the Carter family will choose you? I didn't answer. Ryan smiled. They won't. They need me. They raised me. They love me. I looked at him for a few seconds. Then I said, Ryan, do you know what the saddest thing about you is? What? You still think love is something you can steal. The room became silent. Ryan left shortly after. But I knew this was only the beginning. He would not stop. People like Ryan never admitted defeat. They only became more desperate. And desperation made people careless. 3 days later, my prediction came true. My legal team found something. Pattern. A series of anonymous reports sent against my company. Fake complaints. False accusations. Attempts to damage my reputation. And every clue pointed in one direction. Ryan Mitchell. My lawyer placed the documents on my desk. Mr. Carter, we can take legal action. I looked through the evidence. No. He looked surprised. No. I closed the file. Not yet. I looked out the window. Because I don't want him to lose quietly. My lawyer understood. You want him exposed. I nodded. Completely. Meanwhile, Ryan thought he was winning. He believed he had successfully created problems for me. He even called one of his wealthy friends. "Don't worry," Ryan smiled. "He won't last." His friend laughed. "Your family still controls everything." Ryan smiled proudly. "Of course." But then, the phone rang. His friend's expression changed after answering. "What happened?" The young man's face became serious. "My father just told me. He wants me to stop interfering with Carter Digital." Ryan froze. "What?" He said, "If I continue, I'll lose access to the family business." The call ended. Ryan stood there in disbelief, because he couldn't understand. Why were people suddenly protecting Ethan? The reason was simple. People followed success. 6 months ago, nobody cared about Ethan Carter. Now, everyone wanted to work with him. The same family that abandoned him. The same investors who doubted him. The same people who ignored him. They were all beginning to realize one thing. Ethan Carter wasn't a failed son. He was a future leader. That evening, Olivia came to see me again. This time, she didn't come alone. Claire and Sophia were with her. The three sisters stood outside my office. My assistant looked at me. "Mr. Carter, your sisters are here." I was silent. After a few seconds, I said, "Let them in." They entered. For the first time, the three women who once looked down on me stood in front of me with uncertainty. Olivia spoke first. "Ethan." I looked at them. "What do you want?" Claire lowered her head. "We want to tell you the truth." I said nothing. Sophia's eyes became red. We were wrong. Still, I remained silent, because apologies were easy. Regret was easy. But pain lasted much longer. Olivia took a deep breath. "Ryan lied to us." I looked at her. "I know." They froze. "You knew." I nodded. "I knew everything." Claire's voice trembled. "Then why didn't you tell us?" I smiled. "Because I already told you before." When I looked at them, every time I asked you to believe me, nobody spoke. The silence was painful, because they finally understood. I wasn't angry because of one mistake. I was hurt because they had made the same choice hundreds of times. They chose Ryan over me, every single time. Before leaving, Olivia turned around. "Ethan." I looked up. She hesitated. "Can you give us another chance?" I stared at her. A year ago, that sentence would have meant everything. But now, it only made me tired. "I don't know." Her eyes filled with tears. I continued, "Maybe the Ethan who wanted your love would forgive you. But he doesn't exist anymore." The elevator doors closed, leaving them standing outside. That night, Ryan received a message. A legal notice. A lawsuit had been filed against him. For the first time, the perfect adopted son of the Carter family felt real fear, because he finally understood. The game had changed, and this time, Ethan Carter was the one holding all the cards. For years, I dreamed of one thing: going back to the Carter mansion. Not because I loved the house, not because I missed the luxury, but because I wanted the people inside that house to finally understand what they had done. In my previous life, I returned countless times. Every time, I hoped things would change. I hoped my parents would finally see me. I hoped my sisters would finally treat me like family. I hoped Ryan would stop pretending. But every time, I was disappointed. This time was different. I wasn't going back to ask for love. I was going back to end everything. A week after Ryan received the lawsuit, the Carter family contacted me again. This time, it wasn't Olivia. It was my father, James Carter, the man whose name was known throughout the business world. The man who built the Carter empire. The man who was always too busy for me. His message was simple. "Ethan, come home. We need to talk." I stared at those words for a long time. Home. That word used to mean everything to me. But now, it felt like a place that belonged to someone else. I replied, "I'll come tomorrow." Not because I forgave him. Not because I wanted to return. But because there were things that needed to be said. The next afternoon, my car stopped in front of the Carter mansion. The same gates. The same driveway. The same place where I once stood with a suitcase in my hand, hoping someone would stop me. Nobody did. But today, things were different. A black luxury car stopped behind me. My assistant stepped out. Then my lawyer. 2 security guards followed. Everyone in the mansion noticed. The boy who once left with nothing had returned with his own people. The door opened. Olivia was the first person I saw. She looked nervous, not like the confident businesswoman everyone knew, like someone afraid of losing something important. Ethan. I nodded politely. Olivia. The simple distance in my voice hurt her more than anger, because anger meant I still cared. Indifference meant something had already died. Behind her stood Claire and Sophia. Both looked at me quietly. I walked past them. No hug, no greeting, no explanation, just like a stranger visiting a business meeting. Inside the living room, everyone was waiting. My father, James Carter, my mother, Victoria, Ryan, the people who changed my life. My father looked at me for a long time. Then he spoke. You've changed. I smiled slightly. Everyone changes. He frowned. I heard about your company. It's doing well. He nodded. A complicated emotion appeared on his face. Pride, regret, maybe even guilt. You built all of this yourself. Yes. The room became silent, because they finally heard the truth. Nobody helped me. Nobody supported me. Nobody gave me a shortcut. Everything I had, I earned. Ryan suddenly spoke. Father, we should talk about the lawsuit first. Everyone looked at him. His expression was nervous, but he tried to hide it. I looked at him. You're worried. He forced a laugh. Why would I be? Because you know what you did. His face changed. I don't know what you're talking about. I stood up. My lawyer opened a folder. Inside were documents, evidence, messages, financial records, connections, everything. Ryan Mitchell. My voice was calm. You spent years pretending to be innocent. You convinced everyone I was the problem. But you made one mistake. Ryan stared at me. What mistake? You forgot that I remember everything. Victoria immediately defended him. Enough, Ethan. I looked at her. The woman who once punished me without asking the truth. She still protected him. Even now, you still choose him. Her face changed. What? Even after seeing the evidence, you still protect him. She opened her mouth, but no words came out, because she knew. I was right. My father picked up the documents. The more he read, the darker his expression became. Ryan. His voice was low. Is this true? Ryan immediately panicked. Father, it's not what you think. Then explain. Ryan looked around, searching for someone to save him. But this time, nobody moved. Not Victoria, not Olivia, not Claire, not Sophia. For the first time, Ryan stood alone. I watched him carefully. This was the person who destroyed my life. But strangely, I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel revenge. I only felt tired, because revenge didn't bring back the years I lost. It didn't erase the nights I cried alone. It didn't change the fact that when I needed them, they weren't there. After a long silence, my father looked at me. Ethan. His voice became softer. I failed you. I looked at him. You did. The answer was direct. Everyone froze, because I didn't comfort him. I didn't say it was okay. I didn't say he was still my father. You weren't just absent. You chose not to know. My father lowered his head. I continued. You had a son living under your roof. You never asked if he was eating. You never asked if he was happy. You never asked why he stopped talking. The room became painfully quiet. Olivia started crying. Ethan. I looked at her. She wiped her tears. We really hurt you. I nodded. Yes. Claire covered her mouth. Sophia looked down. Because there was nothing they could say. No excuse. No explanation. Only regret. Then I placed a document on the table. Everyone looked at it. What is this? I answered calmly. My separation agreement from the Carter family. The room froze. What? My lawyer stepped forward. Mr. Carter wishes to officially remove his name from the family records. Victoria stood up. You can't do this. I looked at her. Why not? Because you're our son. I smiled. A sad smile. Am I? Nobody answered. Because I spent 5 years trying to be your son. And you spent 5 years proving I wasn't. Ryan looked at me with disbelief. You would really abandon the Carter name. I looked at him. No, I am returning something. What? The identity you all gave me. The unwanted child. The outsider. The problem. I pushed the document forward. But now, I choose to be free. My father stared at the agreement. His hands trembled. "Ethan, please." It was the first time I heard fear in his voice. Not anger, not authority, fear. But I had waited too long. "I don't hate you," I said quietly, "but I can't go back." I stood up. My sisters immediately followed. "Ethan, wait." I stopped. Olivia looked at me. "Is there really no chance?" I thought about it. The old Ethan would have cried. The old Ethan would have begged them to keep him. But that person was gone. "I don't know." Then I walked toward the door. Outside the mansion, I looked back one last time. The place where I once begged for a family. The place where I lost myself. Now, I walked away stronger. My phone rang. It was my assistant, Mr. Carter. "The board meeting is ready." I looked at the mansion behind me. Then I answered, "I'm coming," because my future was waiting. And this time, I wasn't walking away as a rejected son. I was walking away as Ethan Carter, the man who built his own empire. Inside the mansion, nobody moved. The Carter family finally understood. They hadn't lost a useless child. They had lost the person who could have carried their legacy. And the worst part, they lost him forever. 1 year later, the world had changed. And so had I. A year ago, I was standing outside the Carter mansion with nothing but a suitcase and a few $100s. Everyone thought I was destroying my own life. They believed leaving the Carter family was the biggest mistake I had ever made. But they were wrong. It was the first right decision I ever made. Carter Digital had become one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the country. The small office where Michael, Jason, and I started with old computers was now replaced by a headquarters in downtown Manhattan. Hundreds of employees worked there. Millions of customers used our products. Investors who once doubted me now competed for the chance to work with me. The same people who once called me an abandoned rich kid now called me a business genius. But none of that was the most important thing. The most important thing was, I was finally living my own life. One morning, I stood in front of the glass windows of my office. The city stretched below me. My assistant walked in. "Mr. Carter, the interview team is ready." I turned around. Okay. Today was the anniversary of Carter Digital's biggest achievement. A major news network wanted to interview me. The reporter sat across from me. "Ethan Carter, many people describe you as one of the youngest entrepreneurs who changed the technology industry. Do you agree with that?" I smiled. "I don't think I changed the industry. I just saw an opportunity and took it." The reporter looked at me carefully. "Many people are curious about your past." I knew what she meant. The Carter family. The famous family I walked away from. Do you regret leaving them? For a moment, the room became quiet. That was the question everyone wanted answered. Did I regret it? I thought about the past. The boy who waited outside his sister's office. The boy who saved birthday gifts for people who ignored him. The boy who kept hoping someone would finally say, "You belong here." Then I answered, "No." The reporter looked surprised. "No." I shook my head. If I never left, I would have spent my entire life trying to become someone they wanted. But leaving gave me the chance to become someone I wanted to be. Meanwhile, at the Carter mansion, the atmosphere was completely different from the past. The huge dining table that was once full of laughter was now quiet. Ryan Mitchell was no longer the center of attention. After the evidence against him was exposed, the Carter family ended all support. The adopted son who once controlled everyone's emotions lost everything. His reputation collapsed. The business world learned the truth. The perfect son they praised for years had been built on lies. Ryan tried to apologize. He tried to explain. But nobody believed him anymore, because once trust was destroyed, could never return. As for my family, they changed. But too late. Olivia left the family company for a while. She spent months investigating everything that happened after I returned. She learned about my childhood, about the things I hid, about every time I needed help but stayed silent. One day, she visited the orphanage where I lived before joining the Carters. She met the people who knew the old Ethan, the boy who always talked about his sisters, the boy who was excited to finally have a family, the boy who believed everything would become better. When Olivia returned home, she cried, because she finally understood. I didn't stop loving them. They were the ones who taught me to stop. Claire also changed. She started helping children from difficult backgrounds. She donated money to organizations supporting abandoned kids. When people asked why she cared so much, she always gave the same answer: because I once had someone who needed me, and I failed him. Sophia left the entertainment industry temporarily. She no longer cared about being praised by fans. She started volunteering. She wanted to understand people she once ignored. But every night, she still looked at her phone, at the old messages from me, messages she once considered annoying. Now they were the most precious things she had, because they were proof that someone once loved her without asking for anything. One evening, I received a letter, no sender, but I knew immediately who it was from. I opened it. It was from Olivia. The letter was simple. Ethan, I don't know if you will ever forgive us. Maybe we don't deserve forgiveness. But I want you to know something. The biggest mistake of my life wasn't losing money or business opportunities. It was losing my little brother. You once waited for us. Now we are the ones waiting. Even if you never come back, I hope you live happily, because you deserve that. I read the letter quietly, then folded it. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry, because some wounds didn't disappear. They simply stopped hurting. Years later, Carter Digital became one of the largest technology companies in America. My name appeared on magazines. Business schools studied my decisions. Young entrepreneurs looked at my story as inspiration. People often asked me, how did you become successful? Some expected me to talk about money, investments, strategy. But my answer was always simple. I learned the most important lesson from losing everything. The interviewer asked, what lesson? I looked outside the window. Then I said, never beg someone to value you. Build a life where your worth is undeniable. I was once the son nobody wanted, the child they thought was a burden, the person they believed would fail without them. But they were wrong, because sometimes the person you push away is the person who would have stood beside you forever. And sometimes the person you abandon becomes the person you can never reach again. My name is Ethan Carter. I lost my family, but I found myself. And in the end, that was worth everything.